The campaign this year has been marked, as always, by attempts to reach the greatest number of voters in the shortest amount of time. Both President Ford and Governor Carter have used unusual methods to communicate with the American voter. The president traveled on the Mississippi River in an old steam paddle boat, while Governor Carter traveled on a special campaign train, making brief stops across the Midwest. But for the most part, each candidate used more traditional campaign techniques. They rode in motorcades, ate at countless political dinners, spoke to housewives in supermarkets, workers at factories, and appealed to ethnic, economic, and political interests across the nation. Highlighting this year's campaign have been the appearances of the candidates on a series of televised presidential debates. The second debate concluded with these remarks.
I remember the world of NATO, and the world of Point 4, and the world of the Marshall Plan, and the world of the Peace Corps. Why can't we have that once again? We ought to be a beacon for nations who search for peace and who search for freedom, who search for individual liberty, who search for basic human rights. We haven't been lately. We can be once again. We'll never have that world leadership until we are strong at home, and we can have that strength if we return to the basic principles. It ought not to be a strength of bombast and threats. It ought to be a quiet strength based on the integrity of our people, the vision of the Constitution, and an innate, strong will and purpose that God's given us in the greatest nation on earth.
As we have seen tonight, foreign policy and defense policy are difficult and complex issues. We can debate methods, we can debate one decision or another, but there are two things which cannot be debated: experience and results. In the last 2 years, I have made policy decisions involving long-range difficulties and policies, and made day-to-day judgments, not only as President of the United States, but as the leader of the free world. What is the result of that leadership? America is strong, America is free, America is respected. Not a single young American today is fighting or dying on any foreign battlefield. America is at peace with freedom.
We've talked about some of the aspects of campaigning, and you've seen some of the campaign activities in an American presidential campaign year. Let's consider now some of the things that the campaign is directed at. In this year of 1976, specifically, what are the motivations of the voter which this campaign seeks to develop, seeks to convince the elector that he ought to support Mr. Carter, for example, or President Ford? Let me turn my first question again to Professor Penniman. What are the basic sources of voter motivation that we ought to be considering today in terms of 1976?
Well, the most important single source today, as it has been for perceivable past that we've been studying in this field, is the identification of individuals with the party label. And while it is true that the parties themselves are not doing much as organizations, nonetheless, the voters of the country continue to identify either with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, or now a very sizable group identify themselves as independents.